In 1903, a French expedition walked into the Sahara Desert and came back with something that should not exist. A report was written, hundreds of pages long. Then it vanished. The photographs disappeared. The site was never confirmed again. And what they claimed to find? Massive petrified tree trunks, so large they shouldn't be possible on this planet. So the question is, did they discover something ancient, something forgotten? Or did they uncover something we were never meant to find? In the early 20th century, during the height of European colonial expansion, a French survey team entered one of the most unforgiving regions on Earth, the southern Sahara Desert in Algeria. Their mission was straightforward: map the terrain, document geological features, and return within 6 weeks. But that's not what happened. The expedition took nearly twice as long as planned. When the team finally returned, something had clearly gone wrong. 2 members were dead. Another would later be admitted to a sanitarium in Marseille, showing signs of severe psychological distress. And then there was the report. A massive document, hundreds of pages long, filled with measurements, sketches, and photographic plates. It was printed in a limited run and distributed quietly to a handful of institutions. Then, just as quietly, it disappeared. Officials claimed the report contained errors. A corrected version was promised, but never released. Over time, copies vanished from public libraries. Today, only fragments are rumored to survive. So what did that expedition find? According to the surviving accounts, the team came across something extraordinary. Scattered across a vast region were enormous petrified tree trunks. Now, petrified wood itself isn't unusual. It forms when organic material is gradually replaced by minerals over time. Similar fossilized forests exist in places like the Petrified Forest National Park. But these were different. Much different. The largest trunk recorded by the expedition measured over 40 meters in diameter. To put that into perspective, the famous giant sequoia known as General Sherman, the largest tree alive today, has a base diameter of around 11 meters. These fossilized trunks were several times larger. And they didn't find just one. They documented dozens. For weeks, the expedition progressed without incident. Their notes described routine surveying work, nothing unusual. Then everything changed. One of their local guides, a member of a Tuareg community, led them to a place known in local tradition as the Land of Fallen Giants. At first, the team assumed it was just folklore. But when they arrived, they saw something unexpected. Stretching across the desert floor were long, ridge-like formations, parallel, evenly spaced, and strangely uniform. At a distance, they looked like natural rock formations. Up close, they told a different story. The surface texture resembled bark. In places where the structures had cracked, internal patterns appeared, patterns consistent with wood, not stone. The expedition leader measured one of the formations. Then his colleague measured it again. Both reached nearly the same result. Over 30 meters in diameter. In the days that followed, the team was led to more of these structures. Some were partially buried in sand, others lay exposed, stretching across the terrain like fallen columns. One of the largest specimens was found in what appeared to be an ancient lakebed, a reminder that the Sahara was not always a desert. During the African humid period, this region once supported lakes, rivers, and vegetation. But even during that time, no known trees could reach such enormous sizes. Which raises a question. If these were truly trees, what kind of trees were they? The team began documenting everything. Measurements, sketches, photographs. They noted patterns in how the trunks were arranged. Many appeared aligned in similar directions, as if they had fallen or been placed with some kind of order. Local oral traditions added another layer of mystery. Stories passed down through generations spoke of giants and ancient forces, long before recorded history. The guides insisted that these formations had always been there. Older than memory. Older than tribes. Older even than the desert itself. When the expedition returned to France, they compiled their findings into a detailed report. It should have sparked scientific debate. Instead, it disappeared. No follow-up studies. No official corrections. No public discussion. Just silence. If the accounts are true, there are only a few possibilities. The formations were misidentified natural structures. The measurements were incorrect. Or they represent something we don't yet understand. But without the original data, photographs, and physical evidence, it's impossible to confirm any of these explanations. And that uncertainty is what keeps the story alive. Today, much of the Sahara continues to shift and change. Sand dunes move, landscapes transform, entire regions can be buried over time. If anything like those formations ever existed, they could now be hidden beneath layers of sand. Or they may never have existed in the way the story describes. Either way, the legend of the 1903 expedition remains, a blend of history, mystery, and speculation. If the story ended with a strange discovery in the desert, it might have been forgotten completely. But it didn't. Because what makes this account persist isn't just what was allegedly found, it's what happened after. The silence from science. In most cases, when something unusual is discovered, it attracts attention. Scientists debate it, researchers investigate it, competing explanations are tested and challenged. But in this case, there is nothing. No widely recognized academic papers. No confirmed follow-up expeditions. No preserved specimens in museums. And that absence has led some people to ask a different kind of question. Not what was found, but why wasn't it studied? The rise of alternative theories. Over time, this gap in explanation has been filled by speculation. One of the most popular ideas connects the story to something often called Tartary. In old European maps, this name was used to describe vast regions across Asia, territories that were not well understood at the time. Some modern interpretations take this further, suggesting that Tartary wasn't just a label, but a lost advanced civilization. According to this theory, remnants of that civilization may still exist, hidden, misidentified, or deliberately ignored. A radical possibility. Within that framework, the so-called petrified trees take on a very different meaning. Instead of being natural formations, they are imagined as engineered materials, remains of massive structures, or resources used by a civilization far more advanced than we assume existed. Some even suggest that these trees were not trees at all, but something else entirely, objects whose original purpose has been forgotten. It's a bold idea, but it comes with a major problem. The limits of evidence. For any theory to be taken seriously, it needs evidence that can be tested. That means physical samples, verified locations, independent confirmation. In this case, none of those exist in a reliable way. There are no confirmed coordinates of the site. No preserved Huhat-Vats in that scientists can analyze. No modern expedition that has rediscovered the formations. Without that, the theory remains speculation. What about the photographs? Some versions of the story mention surviving images, grainy photographs showing massive trunk-like structures with a human figure for scale. But these images are difficult to verify, often low quality, lacking clear provenance. In many cases, similar images circulating online have turned out to be misidentified rock formations, edited visuals, or completely unrelated geological features. Without original negatives or confirmed sources, they can't be treated as solid evidence. The nature of geological illusions. Deserts, especially places like the Sahara, are known for creating unusual natural formations. Wind erosion, sediment layering, and mineral deposits can produce shapes that look surprisingly artificial. Long ridges, parallel lines, even textures that resemble organic patterns. To someone encountering them unexpectedly, especially in the early 1900s, they could easily be mistaken for something else. Why the story feels convincing? Part of what makes this narrative powerful is how it's structured. It combines real history exploration, colonial surveys. Real science, climate shifts like the African humid period. And unresolved mystery, missing records, unclear evidence. Then it introduces a dramatic conclusion. That something important has been hidden. This structure is very effective. It keeps the listener engaged and questioning. But engagement is not the same as proof. The bigger question, even if this specific story isn't supported by solid evidence, it touches on a deeper curiosity. Could there be parts of human history we don't fully understand? The answer is yes, but not in the way these stories often suggest. Archaeology is constantly evolving, new discoveries are made all the time. But they are built on careful excavation, analysis, and peer review. Not missing reports and unexplained disappearances. What likely happened? Looking at everything together, the most grounded explanations are: the story has been exaggerated or fictionalized over time. Natural formations were misinterpreted. Details were added to make the narrative more dramatic. That doesn't make it useless, it just means it belongs more in storytelling than in science. Still, the mystery remains. Even with skepticism, stories like this continue to spread. Why? Because they tap into something universal. The idea that there might be hidden chapters of history. That something incredible could be buried, waiting to be found. And in a place as vast and unexplored as the Sahara, that idea feels possible. Final thought. Whether the 1903 expedition was real, misunderstood, or entirely fictional, one thing is certain. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Until that evidence appears, the story remains what it is. A fascinating mystery, a compelling narrative, and a reminder of how easily fact and fiction can blend together, buried truths or manufactured myths. Stories like this don't survive for over a century by accident. They survive because they sit in a very specific space, right between what we know and what we can't fully explain. The desert keeps its secrets. The Sahara is one of the largest and least explored environments on Earth. Stretching across multiple countries, including Algeria, it covers millions of square kilometers of shifting sand, rock, and ancient terrain. And beneath that surface, layers of history. Some of it well understood, like the ancient lakes and rivers from the African humid period. Some of it still being discovered. And some of it possibly misunderstood. Because deserts don't just preserve the past. They also hide it. Could something still be out there? Let's assume for a moment that part of the story is true. Not the extreme claims, not the impossible scale. But the core idea. That early explorers encountered something they didn't fully understand. In 1903, scientific tools were limited. Geology was still developing. Field measurements relied heavily on human judgment. It's entirely possible that unusual formations, large, patterned, unfamiliar, were misinterpreted. Recorded as one thing, when they were actually something else. The role of imagination. Over time, stories change. Details get added. Events become exaggerated. Gaps get filled with speculation. A strange rock formation becomes a fallen tree. A large trunk becomes a massive one. A measurement becomes a legend. And eventually, the story becomes something bigger than the original event. Something symbolic. Why we want it to be true. There's a reason people are drawn to ideas like lost civilizations or hidden histories. Because they challenge what we think we know. They suggest that history is incomplete, that discoveries are still waiting, that the world is more mysterious than it appears. And in some ways, that part is true. We don't know everything. But not knowing everything doesn't mean anything is possible. The difference between mystery and evidence. Real discoveries leave traces. Not just stories, but physical samples, multiple records, Independent confirmation. That's how we know about ancient civilizations. That's how we understand past climates. That's how science moves forward. Without that, a story remains just that, a story. A final look at the claim. So where does that leave the idea of giant petrified trees in the Sahara? There are really two paths you can take. Path 1. Accept the story as literal truth. That massive, unknown trees once existed. That they were discovered, and then deliberately hidden from the world. Path 2. See it as a layered narrative. A mix of real environmental history, possible misinterpretation, and creative storytelling. Both paths are compelling, but only one is supported by evidence. The real wonder of the Sahara. Even without the legend, the Sahara is extraordinary. It holds fossil beds, ancient human artifacts, rock art older than written history. It tells the story of a world that changed dramatically over time. A world that went from green to dry. From rivers to Arabic Alif, Arabic Lam, Arabic Rot, Arabic Meme, Arabic Alif, Arabic Lam. And that transformation alone is more powerful and more real than any hidden narrative. The story continues. Maybe there was an expedition. Maybe something unusual was found. Or maybe this entire story was built piece by piece, shaped by curiosity and imagination. Either way, it has done something important. It made people ask questions. And that's where all real discovery begins. Somewhere beneath the sands of the Sahara, there are still things we haven't uncovered. But until they are found, studied, and understood, the line between history and myth remains exactly where it has always been. Not buried in the desert, but in the stories we choose to believe.